Welcome, guys. We'd like to welcome you to the panel called Bio Bonanza, all about the stories found on the cardbacks of Masters of the Universe Classics. How's PowerCon treating you guys so far? Good? All right. Awesome. Well, sitting up here with me at the table, our three lovely panelists here have all had some sort of contribution to the storyline that has taken place since the Masters of the Universe Classics line launched a decade ago. So if you guys want to go ahead and start right here with Danielle, you guys introduce yourselves and kind of give everybody a little bit of an idea of what you had to do with these bios.
Hi, I'm Penny Dreadful, also known as Danielle. Wait, no, the other way around. It all blends together. It's all the same thing. Reverse the curse. I've been co-writer on the Masters of the Universe Classics bios with Eric since 2016. I think that was when we were hired to do that. It was for Mattel at that point, but it was also kind of where the changeover was happening with Super 7 at that time as well. So, and I've worked on quite a few of the Dark Horse books as well.
But they hired you, they paid you.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
I did it unpaid.
You were an employee. That's.
So I'm Scott Neitlich. I was the brand manager for the line from 07 through 14, and I wrote about 90% of the bios as well as the backstory. The only ones I didn't write were the Filmation mini, like the sub, and whatever Filmation characters were released in 2013. And then I started doing the Filmation ones in 14 again. So there were like maybe 10 or so-ish. And the maps.
Oh, the maps.
And the minicomics.
I'm Eric Marshall. I'm a graphic designer, and I'm just a barnacle that got stuck on the bottom of this ship. Starting when Val asked me to write the bios for the PowerCon exclusives for 2016, but I guess that was in 2015.
Yeah, it was 2015.
But then later we were approached, both me and Danielle were approached to do the bios for 2016, the half wave that was there, and then we've just been lucky enough to still be doing it.
Super 7 was like, okay, you guys can keep doing it.
Right. Well, that was you using magic, right?
Yes, exactly. And of course, Eric also is very humble. He illustrated the programs that you all have and your badges as well, the characters on your badge. That was Eric.
Oh, awesome.
Thank you.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and start all the way back at the very beginning. So we'll start here with Scott. So, creating a brand new toy line for Masters of the Universe, the decision was made to tell new stories in the form of these bios on the cardbacks, whereas the vintage toys came with mini comics that sort of fleshed out the world. So, what was your decision, or what made your decision to tell the stories in the manner that you did, and where did you pull your sources for all this? How did you piece this together to kind of create a new story for these characters?
That question may require a few answers.
Go for it, man. That's what everybody wants to hear.
All right, so let's see. I brought the bios with me here, so if we have to reference any of them. Let's see. Okay, so I said I covered some of this yesterday in the history of the panel, or history of the line panel, but it's worth repeating. So when we kicked off the line in 08, 07, whatever that was, really, legally, we couldn't create entertainment. We couldn't create an animated series. We couldn't create live action because those rights were with Sony or Classic Media, which is then Entertainment Rights, which was then DreamWorks, which was then bought by Universal, who are the current owners of it. Yeah, you got to have a trivia card to follow any of this. But essentially, we couldn't make entertainment. We had toy rights. But a loophole we had was that we could write whatever we wanted on the package. So we knew that we needed some kind of vehicle to drive the line, because just putting the original direction from management was to put them out in white boxes, because look, you're just shipping it direct to consumer. You don't need resources from packaging, because they didn't want to give us packaging resources. They wanted this to just be efficient, which on their spreadsheet made sense. So the original idea was just ship everything in a white box. And we made a passionate plea that like, no, we have to because 50% of our customers are going to keep them in package and display them on their wall. And I showed lots of images, of different collections people had to try to prove this. Still couldn't get much packaging resources, but what we did have was the green brick from the Comic-Con item, which did get packaging resources. So I went to Frank Varela and I said, okay, you made this great green brick, can we turn it into a standard blister card? And he was like, well, yeah, I guess I could do that in my spare time. So he agreed to do that, and then we had to fill the back panel, so the easiest thing to do was to fill half of it with a cross-cell and half of it with a bio. And originally the bios were just there to fill space because we wanted to create a dynamic-looking package. But then after I wrote like 2 or 3, basically the first 3 figures, He-Man and Skeletor, I was like, oh wait, crud, we're actually we can't just, these might require more thought than just quickly writing 1 or 2 bios for He-Man because, we also didn't think the line was going to go past 6 characters. That was a whole thing. So originally we didn't need to write a bazillion bios because we thought, well, we're going to do 6 characters and we're done. Like there's no way this is going to last beyond the first 6. We thought Justice League Unlimited was going to be what made Matty Collector run. Because the He-Man fandom wasn't, the Justice League fandom was there on the internet demanding more figures, and He-Man fans had kind of been burned. We're like, we're done, 2000X, blah, blah, blah. So the original 6 bios then were written really as standalone bios. And then once we realized that this was working and we were going to be doing a lot more characters, that's when the real bio writing happened. And again, the impetus was, it really just came from filling the back panel with something cool looking. Cross-cell and bio made sense. So, and that was basically how we got packaging resources, where just keeping it simple. Then when we had to write all of the bios, that became the big project. So, should I go in? I guess that's what we're here for.
Yep.
So the first thing I did, I'll just say because it was completely me, was first I made a list of every character that we had rights to, which we knew wasn't the Filmation characters because we couldn't touch things that were only in entertainment. That was part of the legal issue. So then once I identified who we had rights to, we looked at everything that had been written like as a bio previously, and the biggest source of that was the 86 style guide, I think, 86, 87. It's a style guide that had Hero in it. And someone had a copy of PowerCon years ago. That was the first time I saw them. But you can get it you can see it online. Mm-hmm. I should have brought an image to show. But it basically had very short bios, maybe 4 sentences for 70% of the characters, a good chunk. And the New Adventures characters all had legitimate bios on the back of their cards. So the first thing I did was I transcribed every single one of those, which took a ridiculous amount of time. And I used to sit in the back of meetings that I weren't a part of but had to be in, and I would just sit there on my thing typing, like I have one side of the screen with the website up, and the other was a Word document. And I was just literally hand typing every single one of those style guides, bios, into Word, and as well as the New Adventures. So once I had all of that done, and a lot of this then I would do at night, especially I had an infant daughter at the time. So while I was doing the sleep up. You've been through that. Yeah. So I would basically sit there, work. That was when I would, because it was hours of work just organizing it before I could even write them, and I knew that was going to take some time. So it took a couple months. It probably took about 4 months to just find everything I could, organize it by character with what was existing. And then I had packaging pull every figure, and this was before a lot was online, because we had to get physical samples. So we pulled every figure from the archive that we could, and I transcribed the one line that was on the back of the package for everyone. Every character, I think He-Man's was actually I could look at it because I've got it right here. He-Man was He-Man safely guards Eternia or something. Let's see. Whoops, I went too far. Somebody's pick up their phone. It's okay, I need a minute to find this so you can take it. All right, here we go, He-Man. So his line was, He-Man guards the safety of all Eternia alongside the heroic masters of the universe. So that was the single line that was on the package in the old line, the vintage line. So made the decision that, okay, we're going to try to use that line word for word as much as possible, and we'll make it the last line of every bio. So that sort of became the outline, where I had that line as the last line, and then whatever was in the 87 style guide as kind of the middle or the beginning. Mm-hmm. So laid all of that out, then decided, okay, what are the things we need the bios to do as a selling tool? because again, we knew we couldn't make movies or cartoons. So I created a sheet where I basically submitted to management like all the things we wanted the bios to accomplish and the justification for why we were doing them, which I knew they'd never read, and they probably still haven't. And it basically said things like, you know, in the film, actually, hold on, I have it. I'll just read it. Let's see, where is it? Abbreviated history bios brief, there we go. Okay, goal, create a cohesive universe which can incorporate the widest variety of characters to make toys of. This will include from the following sources. Minicomics 1 through 5, POP Minicomics 1 through 8, New Adventures Minicomics 1 through 4, 87 License or Style Guide, 2002 MYP Animated Series and Bible, Mattel Entertainment Notes on proposed third season of 2002 series, original Mattel Story Bibles from Donald Glutt, Michael Halprin, and Tim Kilpin, 86, 87, 83, Cardback bios from all vintage toy lines, concept art from Mattel employees past and present. The main backbone of the bios will be the 2002 series storyline, which fortunately echoes much of the Filmation continuity. Mini comics and story bibles will retroactively be worked into the 2002 series storyline in the most cohesive, simplistic way. Minimal new, in quotes, story elements should be added as needed to bridge any story gaps. Challenges. The 87 Powers of Grayskull Bible mini-comic issue, Tim Kilpin, author, had King Grayskull and Hero as one character. The 2002 series established King Grayskull as a unique character. Possible answer. Hero's bio will need to be adjusted slightly so that he is a contemporary and equal to, in terms of power and importance, to the origin of He-Man and individual characters to King Grayskull. Hero can bring the power of the universe to Eternia, giving it to Grayskull upon his death. This makes Hero the origin of the power and Grayskull the direct ancestor of Adam. Both are therefore key to the origin of He-Man. Also note that the mysterious tombstone outside Castle Grayskull in the 2000 series can be Hero's grave. Orko was created as comedic relief for an animated series. To help increase Orko's importance, his powers and the role of his species, Trollins, can be increased. Note, it is already established lore that Orko is secretly more powerful than He-Man than he lets on. Trollins have been hinted at as the already established overlords who control the cosmic enforcers. This would establish Orko as an undercover agent who watches over Adam and the Power Sword for Tralla. Fans have asked for toys based on the original 4 MOTU mini-comics, Green Goddess, Jungle He-Man. This world is contradictory to the 2002 series and established stories. He-Man's from a jungle tribe, there is no Prince Adam or transformation, the sword is split with both sides fight over, Skeletor is from another dimension, the spirit of Grayskull watches over his fortress, the green, in quotes, goddess recruits brave warriors to defend Castle Grayskull, Stratos is shown as an evil warrior, He-Man's personality is completely different. He-Man can be established as a title that other warriors held, guarding the power sword before Prince Adam. The sword can be the sword of He, establishing the name He-Man as the guardian of the sword. Skeletor can be a combination of Keldor and a Desperos demon Hordak combined him with during the whirlwind spell scene transformed Keldor into Skeletor in episodes 33 of the 2002 series. Episode 33 also showed that Skeletor went mad right after the transformation. This would explain why he thinks he is a demon from Despondos in the original mini-comics. Wrapping it up here, fans have asked for toys based on early concept art, specifically Mark Taylor's work and Wonder Bread He-Man. Concept art can be incorporated as unique characters in the mythos to sell more toys. Vicor, He-Man concept art, can be established as an early warrior sword protector using the title He-Man, as noted above, awaiting Prince Adam's destined birth. Demo-Man, Skeletor concept art, can be the Despondos demon that Hordak bonded Keldor with. Savage He-Man Wonder Bread promo can also be an early warrior sword protector using the title He-Man. Vintage Zodak and the 2007 Zodak had completely different backstories and visual looks. Both can be offered as 2 different characters and a repaint no less. Zodak will be the apprentice of Zodak who stays on Eternia after his mentor becomes a cosmic enforcer and leaves for the stars. The Princess of Power characters were not in the 2002 series. After Hordak came to Eternia in Season 3, in quotes, She-Ra and her allies can follow him and join with the Masters, bringing all of the action to one location. Etheria can be established as a planet in Despondos, explaining how Adora grew up there, raised by Hordak during his banishment. The New Adventures characters were not in the 2002 series. After Skeletor defeats Hordak in Season 3, he can set his ambition on conquering the Horde Empire. This will provide a motivation for He-Man and Skeletor to travel in outer space, teaming up with the Galactic Guardians and the Space Mutants from New Adventures toyline. This might have been Season 4 of the 2002 toyline series. And then finally, fans want toys of prototypes never made, i.e. Gygor. Gygor can be established as the enemy of the Jungle He-Man from the mini-comics. He can later return to fight against any other factions.
Can I interject real quick? Because this is all super interesting, and it leads me to a question. Establishing all of this, like a reason for all of these characters to exist in the line is really cool. Was that a requirement? Like, did you, in order to get Mattel to say, yeah, we can have Vicor and Demo Man in the line, did you have to write stories to convince them?
More or less,
instead
yeah.
of just like releasing them as, this is concept He-Man, this is concept Skeletor, similar to what Star Wars has done with their action figures.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay,
Yeah,
so creating the bios was a way to convince Mattel to release all these different characters.
That basically all these characters deserved a toy.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
That was
Very
a big
cool.
part of it.
Very
Yeah.
cool. Very cool. Awesome. So one of the other things that you kind of established with these bios, and it's cool hearing like the reasoning for all this and why you pieced all this story together. But we got a little bit of insight into a lot of these characters that we never really got before, like real names. Some of these characters we had never really seen the name, like Evelyn Powers for Evelyn, or some of the other more wild names that were created for these characters. How did that come about? How did you decide on these names? And what was the reason for giving them real names?
Well, to answer the last part first, giving them real names was really just kind of in sort of toy bio tradition. Looking a lot like what Joe Hammer did with G.I. Joe, and realizing, well, obviously, Beastman's name, his mom didn't name him Beastman.
Are you sure?
Raquel, right?
You don't know.
What should we call him, honey? Beastman. Oh, that's a great, and realizing that's obviously the name of sort of his species or a slang. I mean, it was really kind of taking a step back and thinking logically. I mean, obviously these names, just thinking, okay, they're obviously their warrior names. And really just once kind of came to terms with that, it just became, well, that makes a lot of sense, especially because there were real names. Man-at-Arms' name is Duncan. Tila's name is Tila.
Right.
Tila's name is Tila, but if you will. Sorceress has a real name, if you will. So that's been established in Filmation. Tila Na, right? Did I get that right? So that was really where it came from. I was like, well, a lot of characters have real names. Man-at-Arms is not Man-at-Arms. That's clearly a title, or et cetera. Right. And so, but other characters, like Chief Carnivus, that clearly was his name. You could tell where people, or if you will. So then after that, it just honestly was a lot of my creativity. I mean, I can tell you specifically, I think there's no one rule that went into the real names. They were all handled very individually, specific to that character, and a lot of thought went into it. My wife was laughing. She was sitting in the front row yesterday, and when I mentioned about doing this work in my spare time, she wanted to stand up and say, "It's true. I can vouch for that." Because I didn't have time to do this at Mattel because I was doing my full-time job running the Green Lantern line. And the only way this was going to happen, we could have just done no bios, but again, the cards would have been more boring, and we were realizing they were becoming a vehicle to justify doing more toys to management.
Gotcha.
And that became worth doing it. So I was like, okay, I got no choice. I got to do it. Plus, it was a thrill. I was like, okay, well, I didn't set out to create. I set out to sell toys. We didn't mean to create this giant spanning canon. It just, especially once the mini comics happened, it got out of control. But as far as the names, to answer your question, they were all handled, every single one, just a lot of thought went into it. Beastman's name was meant to be the way his language would have sounded, so his name is I think it's Raquel Rakash, right? And I've got them all right. Yeah, here we go. But it's pronounced Raquel Rakash.
Whoa.
So it's supposed to be that was where we were getting that. Buzz Off was pronounced through his bee species.
Like Merman's was what, Squiddish Rex? That
That
one
one-
always really struck me as
so
odd.
that again, I can answer any question because they
All right.
all actually have individual stories. So
Right.
Merman's name came from the 2000X series. He mentions having an uncle Squidard.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, well, if he has an uncle named Squidard, that obviously establishes what type of names Merman species characters get. And I wanted to give him a royal name because he was the leader of his people, and we use Rex because Latin does get used a lot in He-Man. And so Squidard became Squiddish.
Okay.
That was it. It was established that was how his species had names. So
Okay,
I wanted
very
to have
cool.
a name that sounded Merman species-ish. I tried to make up as little as possible and to use everything I could from something. That was always the point. Is there any other specific names? I mean, I'm happy that, because they were
Does
all,
any stand out to you guys?
Buzz off.
but that would, Buzz Off was like, any name that was like that was all how the species would pronounce the name.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay, very cool. So you mentioned that you basically wrote all these up front as you were creating your list of characters you wanted to do, right? Did you write every bio for every character from the very beginning, or what, did you get to a point where you were writing them as you went to kind of continue the stories that were being told?
I wrote them all over about a 4-month period, right at the beginning. I edited them as I went, lightly, especially once we realized, oh, crud, there's a continuity going on, and we got, like, Titus screwed everything up because, like I said, something wrong in his bio that I had to redo later because the timeline didn't work. And plus we get, like, some comments from management, like, oh, we want it to be 5,000 years, not 500. Like, they did have some comments, and they got incorporated late, which we tried to, of course, incorporate. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, 90% of them were written from day one, or, day 201, whatever.
Gotcha.
And that was also because we didn't want to change them as we went, because we knew that was just going to make it harder. Because anything we changed was going to like it was domino. If we changed 1, we might have to change 12. So it was better just to, especially because we had to get them approved. So it was way easier logistically to just get them all approved at once. Get management to just stamp them and say, you're done. These are good to go. If you make like a sentence or 2 change, that's fine, but we're good. And it was like, okay, you're done, you're good. Management approves, back off. Because it was like, once you start knocking on that door every year, oh, we made some changes, we want you to, then like everyone gets involved, and then it becomes a mess. So it was more like, just get it done, get it out of the way. We had, like I said, we were reusing elements from the Comic-Con package to make the mainline item, which is ridiculous. But that's because we had no resources for packaging. So everything just had to be done in year 1. We were templated, we had bios, the cross-sells were just going to be photographs. It was easy to do. We needed very minimal work from anyone else. 90% of the work would be on me. Management was like, okay, fine.
Got it. So as the stories were progressing, obviously things got a little intense and a little crazy, and all of a sudden characters are dying all over the place. So what brought you to decide to do something like that, so extreme, like where you're starting to kill main characters off?
Well, again, it was all done in the beginning. It wasn't like later on I decided to get vicious.
Right.
Like, I've been doing this too long. Let's start killing everybody. It was really just to treat it as, a realistic world. Obviously, people were going to die, or change had to occur. But really, honestly, no one actually died, because almost everyone who died was coming back in a way. Like Man-at-Arms is a perfect example. So he was going to turn into a Snake Man in the 2002 series, and he was going to be killed like that. Like, that was all going to happen. And then I actually was going to bring him back. You can see it in one of the last mini-comic, where he talked about this in the panel yesterday. This was another one of the screw-ups that the artist did. You can see him in the double-page spread. There's like a robot version of him, which he transferred his essence into before he became a Snake Man. And we were going to have this whole story where they were able to turn it back on, and it was like basically getting Duncan back. But it was like, it was going to be robot, or man or robot, or no, what was that? Man-at-Arms, Robot-at-Arms. Yeah, but so basically we did kind of have plans that anyone who sort of died was going to come back, or like Merman had to die because we had a new Merman coming from Dare, Merman 2, if you will. So it's like, or like 2 of the deaths that happened in the Photog bio were just placeholders, because Nathan was supposed to tell me who he wanted him to fight. He never got back to me. But yeah, it was really just to make the story have consequence, and to really adult it a little bit, because this was an adult collector line, and to make the story believable, that was that was my thought process, I guess.
Okay, great. So let's move ahead now a little bit to Danielle and Eric. At what point did you guys pick up the bios? Where did you start with everything?
What do you mean, like when?
What bio did you pick up with? Like, what was the starting point for you guys to take over?
Or the PowerCon?
Yeah, I did the PowerCon ones, which was Green Granomir, Red Beastman, Beastman probably being my favorite character, so I was glad to do that, and CamoCon, which was one that was kind of funny because I didn't know CamoCon was going to be in that illustration. So I think I said he turned back to CobraCon at the end, and then we found out, the plan was that he was going to be there. So that got a little bit funny later as we tried to figure out how to undo that so he could survive that darn spell of separation. But I think from there we had the 2016 bios and I think Mask was my first
Yeah.
one,
Yeah,
which was,
January. It was like January, late January, I think, of 2016, and it was actually Val through MV Creations wound up getting the job through Mattel as a freelance job, and he offered the job to Eric and I, and. At that point, we'd been working on the character guide for quite a while, and I was really burned out on He-Man. I was like, I can't think about He-Man, I can't talk about He-Man, I just need to like go watch a movie that has nothing to do with Eternia.
we were fine with you killing characters at that point. It was over. We didn't have to write anymore.
But then Val called me, and he's like, hey, I was like, what?
You.
Yeah. He's like, how do you like to write bios for classics? I was like, you the one thing, just when I thought I was out, you pulled me back in. So, he said you'd be co-writing them with Eric, and I was like, oh my goodness. I was obviously, that's kind of a dream gig to get something like that. Yeah. Scott had done it for 7 years, putting this amazing, pulling from all these threads, from all these different iterations, right? So the idea was we were going to do the 2016 bios for Mattel. Well, what happened was Mattel, not that long after we got that gig, we did all the bios like end of January, beginning of February.
The Lord Mask wave?
Yes, the Lord Mask wave. Eric wrote Lord Mask.
We didn't know that. We were told at the time there weren't any other bios. Right? They didn't have any. So I don't know if there were any.
Do you want to hear the Lord Mask bio I wrote?
Sure.
Bio off. You guys gonna have a competition?
I'm not gonna find it. You keep going.
Okay. So then what happened was we wrote all the bios for 2016, and then Mattel wound up telling us, well, we're probably not going to be able to get them in until later on in the year. So we'll figure out what we're going to do with them. And shortly after that, Mattel decided to pull the plug on Classics. So this was like in the in-between time where that's why the bios never wound up on the packages until Roton and Skelcon.
Right, easy come, easy go, we figured.
Yeah, they got them in, and right at the end, they sort of edited them down to shorten them, so those came out. And then
the one I wrote for Red Beast for Beastman.
Oh, he had it? Oh.
Yeah. Let's see, Red Beast, real name Regila Ragaraz, Savage Jungle King. Chief Beastman of the Vine Jungle, the ruler known as Red Beast was a wise but wicked leader who enjoyed punishing and enslaving his subjects from his treetop kingdom. Savage by nature, King Red Beast keeps a harem of wives and slaves to meet his every request. He was contacted by Skeletor shortly before the second Ultimate Battleground in a ruse to take command of his Beastman army. But the Jungle King saw through Skeletor's tricks and in reaction allied his forces instead with the renegade Masters of the Universe. During the ensuing battle, he came face to face with a banished subject of his who is now in the employ of Skeletor. Letting out a fierce war cry, the Red Beast King savagely attacks all his enemies.
Huh. So that was the bear, right? The red bear.
Oh,
guy.
yes, you're right. That was the bear,
No,
not
he was talking
Red
about
Beast
the
Man.
Red
You're right,
Beast
I
Man.
screwed up.
Yeah.
That wasn't the Red Beast Man, that was Red Beast.
Yeah.
You're right.
But that is cool that because Jygor had like heroic colors, but he was a bad guy, and Red Beast had like the skull and everything, like he was a villain, and he was working with He-Man's side in the comics.
Yeah, that's cool. When Super 7 took over the line, the first thing they put out were the Ultimates, and Val actually, got the job doing the packaging for the Collector's Choice and Club Grayskull. Although we don't do the Club. James Eatock does the Club Grayskull bios, which are straight up Filmation, iterations. Right. So when Super 7 came along, they kept us on board to do the bios, and the idea with Ultimates that we talked about was like I remember talking to Val, and we talked about. I brought up, should we reboot this? Should we start it over again? From start it from the beginning sort of thing, because these were sort of the Ultimates But when we talked about it, it was like, well, this line has been going for so long at this point, for 7 years. It just makes more sense to kind of continue the story from where it left off, and that was the directive that we were given. Was like, wherever the story left off, continue it and fill in the blanks and things like that. So we've just been doing that. We've been having a lot of fun. And then they ultimately released the 2016 bios that they were approved and we got paid for them, but they finally released them digitally online through Masters Mondays on He-Man.org.
Yeah, that's the next question I was going to ask. So if you guys didn't know any of that period where the bios were just missing from the back of the packaging, they're out there now that you guys can go and read. So if you've not seen those before, you can check them out they're on He-Man.org, right? Is where all of them are at. So it's pretty cool that we at least got to put them out there so that you can see them.
Yeah, we were glad that finally happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
We didn't know if they would ever see the light of day. It was just nice to have done them.
Right.
To know they exist.
Yeah.
So when it came to writing these brand new bios, what was your process for kind of going at these? Did you kind of take notes from what had come before it with what Scott was doing and try to follow that same logic? And where did you pull your resources from for your stories?
Well, I think we leaned a lot on what we had already learned from the compendium, putting that stuff together. So I didn't notice the structure with the last line being from the packaging. Although I think by the time we were doing it, there were no there was new adventure characters, but mostly there was no packaging. You guys got through all the big ones.
Yeah, we basically did all the
vintage.
All the hard ones. But I think for our patterns, I guess.
Although what I did try to do is, if a character, sorry to interrupt you, if a character didn't have a bio or like Chief Carnivus, I would write the last line to sound like it would be a line on the package. Sorry to again interrupt you, but I specifically remember when Webster came out and someone was ripping on Webster's bio, and the specific problem they had was on the last line. They said, the last line sounds so hokey. It's like a terrible line. Who wrote this? It's like, that was the line from the vintage package, literally. So if there was no vintage package, then I would try to write a line that sounded in that sort of hokey tone from the vintage line. So as far as format.
Well, we didn't notice that, so we didn't.
No one's expected out. No one's ever explained this before because
we only have like a limited word count, so we're always like, let's cram as much story or about the character in there as we can.
Well, we keep trying to reference characters that never got mentioned if we can, or I think we've got Minox in there. I think I know I worked in Shizar and King Helios, one of my favorites, into the Granimir's bio. Green Granimir's bio, which was funny too, because you put the green Granimir in the map of Preternia, and Val had one instruction, was he wanted him to change color like an apple, and I hadn't even thought that that actually fits completely with your map. so I don't know if that was intentional or not, but
I don't think we ever thought we'd get to a green Granimir. So. I definitely didn't write a bio for a green Granimir. I'm looking. I wrote him. God,
he got sick one day. That's the bio.
I wrote a Slime Pit He-Man bio.
Are you gonna read it?
Uzor.
Do you want it? You want to?
You can't just say that and then not tell us.
You can't leave everybody hanging.
All right, let's see. Slime Pit He-Man, real name Adam of the House of Randor, brainwashed goop monster of Hordak. After breaking free from Despondos with the help of Eva Lynn, Hordak returned to Eternia to find his former pupil Skeletor ruling the planet. Using new forms of black magic he had learned in exile, Hordak quickly took control of the planet and created a new hypnotic slime compound, which he used to turn even those who fought for truth and justice to his side. Falling victim to Hordak's evil plot, He-Man was thrown into Hordak's slime pit and temporarily turned into a goop-controlled minion of the ruthless leader of the evil horde.
You use slime compound. That's awesome. That's what Mattel called the slime.
Yes.
That's so great.
And that's deliberate.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
So that means Slime Pit He-Man was in your roadmap then, right?
Yes.
Oh, man. They said the same thing in the panel yesterday, the Classics panel. Brandon brought that up, and I was just like,
we were going to do a slime pit.
They've got the giant out there.
He was going to come with the slime pit, is what it was. That was supposed to be the big 2016 holiday item.
oh my gosh.
But then I had to leave Mattel, so then no one picked up the ball.
So what else was in the roadmap?
Brian is in that other room there, in case anybody wants to.
Well, thanks for ruining my weekend.
Yeah, I know. It's like, that's too depressing. I don't want to know what else was on there.
But honestly, everything else, pretty much, it's been released by Super 7 because the back end, I said this in the line yesterday, the back end of 2016, which got cut, is basically what Super 7 has put out at this point. It was Lodar, it was Granita, it was Mask, it was Stridor, because it was, the whole point of tooling Night Stalker was to do both in the same year.
Right.
Because it justified the cost. I had to present it as a full year cost. And then the same thing with Tuscador. The reverse of him was going to be Hans Hammerholder to reuse the Ram Man body twice. So the whole point was we were bringing the tool out, running it, like it was all done to minimize Mattel's investment. Right. So the full year, basically, those remaining figures have essentially been released by Super 7 at this point. Karg wasn't there because the guy who owns Karg would never work with Mattel. So that's probably the great thing that it went to Super 7 because that could have never happened under Mattel.
Oh, wow.
He just refused to work with Mattel, but as soon as it was with Super 7, he's like, sure, I'll work with you.
Wow.
So, yeah, so basically you've gotten the second half of the year now, especially now that they released Stridor. It was just the slime pit. It was the Comic-Con item was going to be Prince Randor and Prince Keldor in their armor from the mini-comic because it was supposed to be like an Anakin Obi-Wan Clone Wars kind of thing, like before he turned bad when they were brothers, fighting in the Great Unrest. Right. Because at that time, the movie was going to be centered on that relationship. So we wanted to seed that at Comic-Con, that was an important relationship in the mythos. But then the movie fell apart, and then so that was the year they had no Comic-Con exclusive.
Yeah.
That was the exclusive was supposed to be a 2-pack of Prince Adam and Prince Keldor in their like shining armor.
Huh. Wow.
Did you ever have plans for Saren, Keldor's mother?
No, we did have Songster planned. He was in the roadmap too. He was I think he was the subscription figure.
He was the exclusive.
He was the subscription figure.
He was for 2016.
Yeah.
He was going to be.
Yeah, he was going to be the sub-only figure.
They switched it
to Despara.
Despara
Was going to be a monthly figure.
Yes.
Yeah. So you got everyone more or less.
More or less.
Except for songs.
Except for Songster and Hans Hammerholder. Lady Slither was in there, but I think she might be coming.
What?
I hope so. Whoa!
No. I have no knowledge. I just seriously.
We have gotten way off track here. I probably should just stop this before you're going to get somebody in trouble.
I hear from everyone how much they want, so I'm like, I imagine they'll do it. Oh God, I better not yet. It's like Scott said. I have seriously. I had to buy Fangor. I mean, I buy all my Super 7 figures. So Mattel even cut off my subscription midway through the year. So I had to call Digital River because obviously everything had stopped.
You called Digital River?
Well, I had to call them. It was crazy. Yeah, because I had to get a subscription set up in the middle of the year because obviously the time had ended and Mattel and the president of Digital River, who we were working together, he called Mattel and was like, "Did you really want to cut?" They're like, "Yes, you have to cut that off." And he's like, "Really? Okay, Scott, I'm sorry. I have." I was like, "It's okay. Just as long as you can. Here's my credit card. Just as long as I get all the figures."
Right.
So.
Did you get an extra?
All right,
faker?
I'm gonna.
Fisto, you could have sold that.
Oh yeah, probably.
Fisto, yeah. All right, I'm gonna steer this back on course real quick because we're getting close to the end. Okay.
We're so off track.
I want to ask for Danielle and Eric again. Back to what you guys were doing. So, you're writing your stories. Decision was made to bring all these dead guys back, right? Tell us about that. What was the reasoning for this?
Okay, so there were a few reasons I think we went in that direction. First, there was the practical reason that we were starting out with the Ultimates figures, which were all He-Man, Skeletor, Teela, Faker, and
Ram Man.
Ram Man, thank you. And so the bio had to be for those characters. Those bios had already been written for those characters by Scott. So it was like, okay, and we were told you have to continue the story. So that was one consideration. And then the other idea is I didn't, we're talked about it. It's like, well, Skeletor's dead, and that's not going to last. There's no way Skeletor was going to stay dead. So we came up with this thing, this idea called the Reawakening, which I know might be a bit ham-fisted, but it was like, okay, we got all these dead characters. We want to play with them in this world, so we're going to find a way to bring them back. So we had Evelyn and Skeletine they find Keldor's corpse, and we try to pull from a lot of different sources for Masters, as Classics has always done, pull from every source. There's so many sources all over, and so we had in the DC Comics, at the end, spoilers if you haven't read it yet, the Eternity War, block your ears. You know, at the end, Evelyn brings Skeletor's corpse to the everlasting pool of his mother's Saren's blood, and she resurrects. Just the last thing you see kind of is, you know, he's resurrected. So we thought, geez, it would be kind of cool to bring back Skeletor as Keldor and return him to sort of his original state, and then we can play with Keldor a little bit. So we used the pool of Saren's blood, and she casts this spell that has a ripple effect across Eternia and winds up tearing a hole into a rift into the afterlife, and it opens the gates to the afterlife. And you bring back characters who have died that we can kind of incorporate into the story. So this is sort of after the Son of He-Man era, leading into this sort of reawakening period where we've brought back characters. Castle Grayskull had been destroyed by the Unnamed One at this point. I mean, Skeletor was dead, Castle Grayskull was destroyed, I think Zodak was dead, Stratos was dead, Man-at-Arms was dead, Merman was dead, and I like having those characters around because they're fun. So I think that's ultimately, it was like, I want to include Merman. I think, you know, it was play with them in that world, you know.
It was kind of the X-Men approach where like, well, we got to have origins for superheroes. Why don't we just say that there was one thing that's responsible for all of them? So with this, it was like one thing that brings all these people back, not necessarily permanently or not necessarily correct.
Well, there are
but
repercussions as
Yes.
a result of it, like major repercussions that happen as a result
Zombies?
of that. Well, no, that wasn't zombies.
Well, we certainly wanted to keep it open for that possibility. We don't know what will happen, but I mean, with releases. But yeah, because we didn't know if there'd be more Ultimates. So if there was an Ultimates for someone else who was dead, we needed to have an explanation for why they might be showing up. I think we don't know if I don't think there will be, but I don't know.
Yeah, and Eric and I have, like, as we've worked on this, we have reams of emails where we're going over Masters of the Universe canon and trying to kind of piece everything together, and then we have this. I can't say too much about it, but we have this massive Google Doc where we're just like with notes and synopses and bios, and we're just like hashing things out and figuring everything out and sort of synthesizing the canon and trying to fit it into what's already established in classics, but also sort of and using existing things and trying to create something new as well. And I think, you know, having that synthesis of all of those elements where you do create something new. It's fun. It's just like we're like kids in a candy store. It's like, oh God, we get to use. Holy moly! Here's Evelyn, and we can put oh look at this character from a German comic that the German fans love. This guy, he's a villain from the audio play or something. You know, well, let's bring him in as the main villain in this bio and have them fight this one. You know, so it's fun to kind of like give props to all aspects of Masters of the Universe because it's such a diverse brand with so many iterations that all deserve to be acknowledged and recognized in some way because all these characters are wonderful and everybody's a fan of some character out there, you know. So I want to we both kind of want to give nods to a lot of that and bring and familiarize people with those characters. And like Scott was saying, maybe somebody would want, maybe one of those characters would become like a popular character. People might be like, hey, because I know Lieutenant Andra has gotten some attention lately because she was in the Injustice comic and we have her in the card bio too. And it's like, hey, everybody's talking about Lieutenant Andra. There's a little buzz going on there. That would be cool if they made a figure of her.
She's our Minox.
Oh, Minox. I really want. He's this Minotaur, like a cyborg Minotaur from the Italian comics. He has metal horns and he shoots lightning bolts at He-Man. He was created by Skeletor. I'm like, that's pretty badass, a Minotaur guy.
When we did the Create a Character contest, the one that Danielle, the Castle Grayskull man, we had so many Minotaur.
Yeah.
We organized them by theme at one point. So we had like all the fire characters and the water characters, and there was like there's a lot of Minotaur characters.
Yeah, and there's an existing one in vintage canon that we could use,
That's awesome.
Do it. Make it happen, Super 7.
All right, well, we're kind of at the last little bit of the panel now, so I want to open it up to questions. If anybody out there wants to ask any of these folks questions about the bios, there's a microphone right here in the center. Just go ahead and line on up.
I also found 2 more good ones to read.
All right, we'll end the panel with those.
Okay.
Hi. Well, thank you. This has been a really fantastic panel and incredibly insightful. I was wondering, you keep making references to like notes and emails and things that, a lot of this raw material. And I'm wondering, at any point in time, possibly in the future, could possibly any of this be released?
I'm sorry.
You mean like as a collection?
Yeah,
like
as a
a book.
collection.
You want to
So-
read our emails?
Not necessarily read your emails.
You want me, like, yeah, I'm not sure what you're asking to release.
Yeah, well, maybe.
So I mean, there's materials that get released, and then there's all the work you're doing beforehand to come up with it, figure out the connections, and maybe we could do this,
Yeah.
maybe we could do that, and it sounds like that's a very interesting and compelling story of the thought process that went into what actually ends up coming out. And I'm wondering if at some point in the future that's something could be considered to be
So you
released.
could do like a book with all the bios that's got bonus
Oh,
information that shows the creation process.
I think
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Something like that, exactly.
That would be something that would have to be approved by like Mattel Legal.
Sure.
And if they were to say, yeah, you can include something like release something like that, then at that point we could, if people would be interested enough in reading, our mad emails to each other, like, what if we do this? But maybe, if
I'm just
people
planting
want to
the
read
seed.
that.
Nice.
You'd have to ask Mattel for that, basically. I mean, I wrote them, but Mattel owns them, so.
Specifically, talking about the Princess of Power characters and their bios in classics, some of them were kind of edgier. Like you had Mermista killing Merman, which was, in my opinion, kind of awesome because it gave them like an edgier feel. And then some of them were a little softer, and I'm curious about what the decision was to not kind of go in a more creative direction with those and kind of maybe lean back into the doll kind of feeling from the past. And bonus question, if you have a Starburst She-Ra bio, could you read that, please?
I think I do. I'll search for it after I get because I found these two on screen.
Okay.
But to answer your question, so part of the original pitch was that we were going to treat, and the way management wanted it done, and approved it, was to treat the Princess of Power figures not as dolls at all, but to pretend that they were released in the He-Man line, essentially, as action figures like Tilo or Evelyn, which was also the way we aesthetically did the toys, if you will. So I know they were released as dolls, but the idea was eventually actually to do a doll-based line, as well as a Filmation line, which Super 7 is now doing. This was all sort of part of the plan, but the reason was because we were treating them like they were figures released in the He-Man line, not the She-Ra line. That was a very deliberate decision for just to have everything feel the same and not have half the figures feel like dolls.
Cool. Anything else? Or should Scott just read these bios? Oh, you got a question? Go ahead, man.
Please.
Do all the New Adventures characters have bios?
All of the New Adventures characters that had toys have bios, yes, because 90% of their bios were the bio taken right from the Cardback. The New Adventures characters had more vintage words than any other character. Like I did the least amount of writing. So yes, every vintage character had a bio. All right, so let's see. You wanted Starburst She-Ra? All right, so first I found on my screen, I've got Songster and Skeleton. And then I'll find Starburst She-Ra. Okay, Songster. Originally it was a Comic-Con item, but I guess he changed to the subscription figure. Real name, Arcado, A-R-C-A-D-O, heroic bard of Eternia. During the reign of King Randor, Songster served as chief minstrel to the royal court. He chronicled and sang of the many legends and battles throughout the history of Eternia. His most popular ballads always involved the exploits of the legendary He-Man, a great warrior who defended against evil, going all the way back to the time of King Grayskull. When Prince Adam joined both halves of the Sword of He to transform into the one true He-Man, Songster wrote the tale into a great song that he used to bring hope and comfort to those oppressed by evil. Songster sings great tales in the Filmation style of heroes and villains throughout the history of Eternia. Oh yeah, that was the whole idea, was Filmation was supposed to be the way Songster told the story.
Interesting.
That was so like the whole story of Filmation is just Songster's version of what really happened.
Wow.
So that was him doing the morals at the end,
Yes.
actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Skeleton, the son of Skeletor, real name Dion, D-E-O-N, evil master of revenge. Raised by monks on Eternia's smallest moon, Dion knew his father from legend as the rightful heir to Eternia's throne, cast out by prejudice and hatred. Swearing revenge on his home planet, he trained in magic and technology to take back the crown rightfully his. Opening a portal to the nameless dimension, he freed the Unnamed One who attacked Eternia with his revenge squad. In a great conflict known as the End of War, Skeletor helped lead the Unnamed One's troops against the Masters of the Universe. Using the power of Grayskull, Dare, the new hero, turned Dion to stone, putting an end to his vengeful quest forever. Seeking retribution in his father's name, the son of Skeletor wears a skull mask and battles all heroic warriors.
Would that have been a variant? The stone?
Maybe. All right, you wanted Starburst She-Ra? Let's see if I... Starburst, let's see if... She-Ra, Starburst, real named Adora, the House of Randor, the most powerful woman in the universe. Her cape opens to a burst of stars. That meant it was supposed to be a burst-on package. After following Hordak through the laser gate to Eternia, She-Ra joined forces with the renegade Masters of the Universe, who continued her battle for freedom against the evil Horde. Using her magic to create a burst of powerful stars, Adora challenged not only Hordak, but Skeletor, King Hiss, and Gygor as well, fighting bravely for freedom in the second ultimate battleground. She defended her friends at the base of Grayskull Tower, fighting hand-to-hand against many of her most ruthless foes. Following Skeletor's ultimate victory at this battle, she joined forces with the Galactic Protectors, following the Overlord of Evil into outer space to defeat him, as well as end the threat of the Horde Empire once and for all. There you go. Mm-hmm. So a lot of this came out in the mini-comics, too. Like, a lot of the bios that didn't get released and where it was going was also, like, we were glad to have that, because that was a medium, too. So
Cool.
All right, there you go. Starburst She-Ra.
All right, and I think with that, we're going to go ahead and call an end to the panel. So can we hear a round of applause for our panelists up here today? Thank you so much, guys.